Have you ever heard of the Amalekites? In the biblical narrative, they are a mysterious and powerful nomadic tribe, often depicted as the sworn enemies of the Israelites. Their story begins in the book of Genesis, where Amalek is introduced as the grandson of Esau, the brother of Jacob. This lineage places them as distant relatives of the Israelites, yet their relationship is marked by relentless conflict from the very start. The first major clash happens in the book of Exodus, shortly after the Israelites escape from Egypt. As the weary Israelites travel through the desert, the Amalekites launch a surprise attack on them at a place called Rephidim. They specifically targeted the weak, the tired, and the stragglers at the rear of the group. This act of cruelty was seen as particularly heinous. Moses, watching the battle from a nearby hill, had to keep his hands raised for the Israelites to prevail, with Aaron and Hur supporting his arms when he grew tired. This battle set the stage for an enduring and divinely ordained enmity. God declared a perpetual war against the Amalekites, vowing to one day completely blot out their memory from under heaven. This divine decree is a central theme in their story. This command from God is repeated and emphasized throughout the Old Testament. In the book of Deuteronomy, Moses reminds the Israelites of the Amalekites' treachery in the desert and instructs them not to forget. Once they are settled in the Promised Land, they are commanded to carry out this judgment. The most famous and dramatic execution of this command is found in the first book of Samuel. God, speaking through the prophet Samuel, orders King Saul to utterly destroy the Amalekites, men, women, children, infants, and all their livestock. It was to be a complete and total annihilation, leaving nothing behind. Saul, however, disobeys. He leads his army against the Amalekites and achieves a great victory, but he spares their king Agag and keeps the best of the sheep and cattle, supposedly to sacrifice them to God. Samuel confronts Saul for his partial obedience, delivering a powerful rebuke. To obey is better than sacrifice, because Saul failed to fully carry out the divine command. Samuel declares that God has rejected him as king. Then, in a grim and shocking moment, Samuel himself executes King Agag, solidifying the gravity of the decree against Amalek. But did this complete the prophecy? Were the Amalekites truly wiped out? The story doesn't quite end there. The Bible suggests that remnants of the Amalekites survived. In the later chapters of 1 Samuel, David and his men are still fighting bands of Amalekites who raid their towns. The most famous of these stories is the raid on Ziklag, where Amalekites capture the families of David and his men. David, distraught but determined, pursues them and manages to rescue everyone. This indicates that even after Saul's campaign, the Amalekites continued to exist as a scattered but persistent threat. Their presence continues to pop up in the historical books. For example, during the reign of King Hezekiah, centuries later, the Book of 1 Chronicles records a group from the tribe of Simeon traveling to Mount Seir and striking down the last remnant of the Amalekites who had escaped. This suggests that the final eradication of this people group was a long, drawn-out process that spanned generations. The final, and perhaps most well-known appearance of an Amalekite in the biblical story is in the book of Esther. The main antagonist of this story is Haman the Agagite. The term Agagite is widely believed to mean he was a descendant of Agag, the Amalekite king whom Saul spared and Samuel executed. Haman, a high-ranking official in the Persian court, devises a plot to annihilate all the Jews throughout the Persian Empire. This plan is a chilling echo of God's earlier command to destroy the Amalekites. The conflict has come full circle. The ancient enmity between Israel and Amalek re-emerges on a grand scale, with the fate of the entire Jewish people hanging in the balance. Haman's plot is ultimately foiled by the courage of Queen Esther and her uncle Mordecai, and Haman himself is executed. The story concludes with the Jewish people defending themselves and establishing the festival of Purim to celebrate their deliverance. This final confrontation is seen by many scholars as the symbolic end of the Amalekite threat. So, what are we to make of this fierce and uncompromising command to destroy an entire people group? This is one of the most difficult and debated passages in the Old Testament. Some interpretations view the command literally as a specific historical judgment against a uniquely wicked tribe whose actions represented a fundamental opposition to God's plan. Their attack on the vulnerable Israelites in the desert was seen as an attack on God Himself. From this perspective, their destruction was a necessary act of divine justice and protection for God's chosen people. Others, however, see the story in a more symbolic or allegorical light. In Jewish tradition, for example, Amalek often represents the epitome of irrational hatred and the embodiment of evil that seeks to destroy the people of God in every generation. The command to blot out the memory of Amalek is interpreted metaphorically as a spiritual injunction to fight against evil, injustice, and the forces of chaos in the world and within ourselves. It's a call to actively oppose those ideologies and actions that threaten goodness and righteousness. This allegorical view helps to address some of the profound ethical questions raised by the text. Instead of a literal command for genocide, it becomes a timeless lesson about the nature of good versus evil. The Amalekites represent the spiritual enemy, the internal and external forces that pull us away from our divine purpose. The fight against Amalek is therefore not a historical battle fought with swords and spears, but an ongoing spiritual struggle. It's the fight against doubt, despair, hatred, and cruelty. When Moses' hands were held up during the battle, it symbolized the importance of prayer and reliance on a higher power in this struggle. When Saul failed to completely destroy them, it symbolized the danger of compromise with evil. This interpretation allows the story to carry a powerful moral and spiritual message that resonates. Beyond its ancient historical context, the story of the Amalekites, from their first ambush in the desert to their final symbolic defeat in the person of Haman, serves as a powerful and unsettling thread in the tapestry of the Old Testament. Whether understood literally as a historical account of a specific people group or allegorically as a timeless struggle against evil, their narrative forces us to confront difficult questions about justice, mercy, obedience, and the nature of divine commands. They are a shadow that follows the Israelites throughout their history, a constant reminder of the spiritual and physical battles that define their journey. The command to remember what Amalek did and the subsequent command to blot out their memory creates a fascinating paradox that has intrigued scholars and believers for centuries. Their story is a stark and dramatic example of the high stakes involved in the biblical narrative, where historical events are interwoven with profound theological truths. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this exploration, don't forget to like and subscribe for more deep dives into biblical history.